Wow, say,
All right, guys. Hey, thanks so much for joining us here today. I'm so excited to be joining you live to discuss the opportunities that are going on in the world today, specifically different emerging markets. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to enter a space such as Africa, where it's what was once called the Wild West, where things are just crazy, where you think about the foundation of America, you think about how the heck did we as a nation in America go out west and conquer the region that was once so terrifying? Well, that's happening today. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be on the forefront of founding Chicago or Denver way back when? I know growing up, I used to talk about this with my friends. What would it be like to own a city, to build a city? Well, guys, that's what's going on in Africa. And if you're unaware of it, that's what we're here to talk to you about today. I'm Scott Griswold. I have the privilege of being one of the GP partners of this fund. I'll introduce you to my other three GP partners here in just a moment. First off, I just want to give you some rules of the game, right? I just want to introduce you first off to us and let you know that we are not professional webinar guys, okay? We are not the folks who teach people how to run webinars. If you haven't figured that out already, you absolutely will. We are not here to teach you how to run a successful webinar. We are here to teach you about emerging markets, about Africa, specifically Zambia, and let you just have an insight on some of the things that we've learned, okay? I have to give out the quick little disclaimer. This is not investment advice. We are not by any means giving you any kind of advice. It is just purely for educational purposes only. You assume all risks with whatever information that you do with what we give you moving forward. So I'll go ahead and give you a round robin introduction to my GP partners. And by all means, guys, please feel free to ask us questions throughout the entire conversation tonight or today, wherever we might find you. Please feel free to drop things in the chat. Our team and we will be monitoring those as best we can. We're going to go through today. I've got a screen over here. So if you see me looking off on this side, we're going to go through a quick recap of what we discussed in our last webinar. We're going to talk about current events impacting Zambia's agriculture. We're also going to discuss a very exciting opportunity called the Libido Corridor. You may have never heard of that before, but by the end of tonight, or by the end of this conversation, rather, you will understand everything that you need to know about it. And then we'll wrap up with some key opportunities to answer your questions. So with that, I want to introduce you first off to my GP partner and dear brother, Mr. Carl Steinman. Carl, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Scott, and welcome to the webinar number 2 for us. So thank you. Carl Steinman, I am the Chief Operating Officer. Really excited to be here tonight to take you through a little bit of detail about a recent development within the Libido Corridor. And it's an old project. I'll get into a little bit of the details in a bit. But great to be here. And I think I'll turn it over to Jeff Bortz, our CEO.
thank you, Carl. And as I said, it's our second, and we're excited. We got some amazing feedback from the first one we had. And like Scott clearly mentioned, this is not our day job webinar. We're here to try to create education and an interest around a topic that's very dear to our heart. So yeah, let's have some fun, and I'll pass it over to Brandon.
Hey guys, Brandon, Chief Development Officer, the guy that gets it done on the ground here. Like most people, when you become passionate about something, you really become a nerd on it. That's definitely what we bring to this. Emerging markets are cool, innovative, and you get to take the technology that other countries have spent hundreds of years building and immediately apply it. So I'm excited to share this with you guys. We're excited for all of you to come back. We got so many questions that came in, and it's great to be able to go on this journey together.
Guys, I'm excited to jump back in here, and thank you all so much for introducing yourselves. And again, my name's Scott Griswold. They keep me around just to have some fun. I'm responsible for strategic development and really seeing the opportunities that may present themselves down the way. And I'm so honored this evening to just give you a quick recap. Or I keep saying this evening, I mean, our brother Jeff is joining us from Italy right now. He's a globe traveler. Brandon's heading out to New Zealand next week. I mean, we've got people all over the place. We're all based here in the United States. And I want to talk to you, though, briefly how this project came to be and give you some insight from our last webinar when we discussed what it would look like to enter into an emerging market that would otherwise seem quite scary, right? And that's how I got started when I came on board with this project. We're all 4 Tony Robbins Platinum Partners. I don't know if you've ever heard of Tony Robbins, but definitely somebody to look up. He's got a Platinum Partnership program, which is, I would say, the top 1%, 2% from multiple industries all around the world who have come together purely to learn everything that Tony's got and see how we can make the world a better place. And although this project had already been going on for about 8 or 9 months when I joined, we were at a business mastery event where we first learn every single foundational principle possible from one of the world's best, Tony and his team. And we were specifically on this project rescuing children out of the Congo. And during that time, we rescued 50 children, put them into an orphanage with one of our Platinum Partner friends. It's under UN protection. It was a massive operation, just like you see in the movie Sound of Freedom. And it was at that time that Carl and Jeff got introduced to me, and they were talking about specifically how Jeff has put so much time, effort, energy, and resources into Africa, personally funding the education of children. He was introduced to me specifically as someone with a vision to educate 100,000 children for free. And so as I wanted to so badly just speak with him in that moment, I had to go somewhere. And I don't know if you guys have ever had this before, but I walked about 10 feet away, and I swear it was the voice of God said, turn around and go talk to this man right now. And I came back to him. I said, Jeff, I don't know why, but we have to speak. Please tell me what you've got going on. Jeff, I'd love to hear it from your mouth right here, right now. Please explain to me what you said in that moment and recap that conversation in those hallowed halls of business mastery.
Yeah, like you said, it was a mutual connection. By then, Carl and I were already growing the project. And normally we try not to share too much, especially when we're in the building phase. And I explained to you, hey, we have 50,000 acres of land. Do you want to come play? And your reaction was that. You basically saw So it for me, from there on, I think our team continue expanding, and I think the project that we have now evolved tremendously. And I think that's one thing we learned. Like, as we partner and we meet the right people, our dreams can really, really enhance and take new forms, better forms than we can even imagine. So I'm very happy to have all of us here as GPs, and I think we all complement each other perfectly. So we're here, and then we're here to add value, and we're here to not only educate, but also to feed and to see what else God wants us to do for the people of Africa.
Absolutely. And the crazy thing is, guys, we had all been there. 250 of these Platinum Partners had just been in Zambia, staying in one of the most beautiful, pristine regions of the world I've ever been. And we stayed right on Victoria Falls. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's one of the 7 wonders of the world. I highly recommend you go. We stayed in this amazing resort with giraffes and zebras walking around outside our front door. It was incredible. And then this opportunity popped up. And I remember when I was there, I said it would be amazing to have a home here someday, to be able to call this my home. Now, what is some ordinary white guy from America doing talking about Africa? Well, that's what we're going to get into right now. And I'm excited to introduce you again to our GP partner and one of our dear brothers, Brandon, because again, we started to analyze what it would look like to build a city in Africa. What would it look like to build a conscious, sustainable, regenerative city? Meaning that it regenerates. It's like Brandon always says, we can teach a person to fish or we can give them a fish. Which one's going to be more effective? Clearly, it would be better to teach them how to fish. So it's sustainable, it's regenerative. So Brandon, we're going to go ahead and give the floor to you, brother. Talk to us about why we're starting with a $30 million MVP fund to attract the right players, and why specifically we're focusing on food and agriculture first. It's all yours, brother.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. Yeah, so a couple things. So MVP, what is that? That's minimum viable product. So anytime you're looking at going into a new venture, you're going to say, okay, what do I have to do to become profitable so this thing can grow and we can benefit people? Because the best way to preserve anything and give is to make that thing profitable, because then everybody wants in. And so having that in this situation is important. So we looked at, okay, what does that area need? Okay, it's not manufacturing. It's not looking at new high-tech office or something like that in the US, it's the basics, right? It's food. Something that we often take for granted. We talk about the food waste in Western countries in general is massive. You don't have those problems in there. And so we're presented with a very unique opportunity. We have a basic need that isn't being met, but yet we have advanced technologies to meet that need. And so the barrier to entry is the cost, the capital upfront cost, and the skills. And that's what we bring to the table. So bringing in the team to be able to develop that, bringing in the right partners, and bringing in the capital to buy the necessary high-tech equipment to where we can come in, hit the ground running. And so looking at that, we've said, okay, right now, the area is being supplemented by the government, meaning the government actually buys the food, buys corn in particular, maize, and above market value to encourage local farmers to produce more. And they also will often not let you export to other countries because they need it so bad. So that sets a floor on the price target and therefore the risk, unlike in the States or others where it can go fluctuate up and down. It doesn't matter. And so you could produce and you got to hold it and you got to hope that it goes high. Versus over in Zambia in particular, the surrounding countries, you don't have as much of an issue with that because the supply just isn't as high. They simply need the food. And so looking at that, we're able to not only generate great returns for low risk, which is valuable in any entity that you're involved in, but we can also really serve the community. So when you talk about moving up in the world and how do you, climb and, become doctors and lawyers and build these great businesses stuff, none of us would do that if we were worried about where our next meal was. And so by solving that issue, you truly can lift up an entire population because now they don't have to worry about where am I going to get my next meal at. They can say, okay, I'm going to study more. I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to invent something. I'm going to start my own business. And so having that freedom is truly what we're here to do. It just happens since that we can make a good profit in the process, which only means that more people want to get involved, which means that we can do more things, grow into more countries, because at the end of the day, Africa is the brave new world. The colonialism is gone. They're standing up on their own. Technology is advancing rapidly. And so you don't have to worry about, okay, like what's going to happen? Is this going to fall into civil war and somebody's going to take over? No, it's a very stable area and it makes it very attractive for us to get into. So you asked a question about building a city, right? And this is something that we often take for granted in the United States because they're all really built. Nobody really does a planned city anymore. But the benefit of doing that is that we're taking today's technology and applying it to an empty landscape. And so you often hear in the news about the crumbling infrastructure that the United States has. Well, you don't have that over there. So instead of worried about like lead pipes and bridges collapsing and all this stuff because it was built years and years ago, we come in and it's like, oh, no, we're going to use PVC pipes or we're going to use, copper underground for our electricity. We don't have to worry about constantly repairing and updating everything because we can come in and say, hey, we learned this over the last 150 years and we got here. So now we're just going to start with all that knowledge and do it. It's like reading a book. Okay. Somebody took a lifetime of knowledge and put it in a 200-page book. And now you can read that and you don't have to worry about the days that they were sick and didn't do anything or I didn't feel like it. You only read the good stuff. And so you take all those valuable lessons that took them 30 years to come up with, and you get to read it in a book. Well, it's the same thing. We're taking 150 years of improvement, technology, and oopsies, and taking the best and saying, okay, all that knowledge is now here. So today, when we build things in the United States, they're built to last 100 years. Okay, but it's not always been like that. And so now think about this, the first iteration we're going to be building to last 100 years. Imagine 100 years ago what the States looked like. Now go 100 years in the future and imagine what the world's going to look like. So it's very exciting. So excited that everybody wants to come in with us and be a part of this ever-changing landscaping. And it's exciting to be on the frontier, just like the Mayflower was 200 years ago. So yeah, so Scott, I'll go back over to you, and we'll get this thing going.
So well said, brother. And I love what you talked about in the crumbling infrastructure of America. What would it be like, guys, if we could go back in time with today's technology? I don't know if you're like me. I like to watch those old history movies and think to myself, oh my gosh, what if we had one of these back then? I grew up playing that game. Was anybody else like me? I grew up playing that game, Age of Empires. And I don't know about you, but I had all the cheat codes memorized, right? Cheesecake Jimmy's. I still remember it today. That was way back there, right? I knew how to have the abundant food for my citizens. I knew how to have the little car drive around and protect my people. That's what we're doing. It's so amazing. I just pulled that out of nowhere, guys, just having fun with you. But here's the thing. I think back to when Jeff and I first connected on this project, and Carl and I first connected on this project, and then watching Brandon come in together and us all forming this incredible team, because I think it's all in the team, right? We have so much fun together, guys, and you should see our support team. Oh my God, we could not do it without them. Huge shout out to our support team right now. So with that, guys, it's amazing in that moment when I was talking to Jeff and Carl, I had the same questions you probably have. I'm like, what about the land being taken? That's a big thing that I've heard about in Africa. Even when I was there, boots on the ground, serving with the rest of our platinum partners in the Makuni school, we brought education, where we brought water, running water, things that we take for granted. They didn't have running water, and we made all that possible for them. And as I watched around, I heard stories of land being taken and all this other crazy stuff happening. And I asked Jeff that, and he said, brother, I've served there for 12 years, my team and I have. He said, I served there for 2 years, no profit at all. Jeff has an education technology business. All of us have been very successful running 8- and 9-figure companies. And so that being said, with that, he said, look, because of what we've been able to do, because we brought technology, because we brought education to the region. I love to brag on Jeff. He'll never brag. I love to brag on my brother. He said, we brought them opportunity that they would never have. We made certain that we weren't trying to take things from them. We wanted to bring things to them. And so the locals, the indigenous, the tribal chiefs, even the government back Jeff and the team and back us in every possible way. So rather than us worrying about land being taken from us, which happens in traditional land, I want to teach you something right now. If you're going to buy land in emerging markets, there's 2 different types, okay? People get their land taken when it's traditional land. A tribal chief will pass away, and then it goes into disputes, and there's nothing to validate that it belongs to you. We have titled land. You see, Jeff has, and his team has, this open book that doesn't even exist. They've taught him how to title the land. That's our X factor. So that if something happens, we've got the documentation from both the government and from the locals that says, yes, this is your land. We cannot touch it. It belongs to you. It's on a 99-year leasehold, much like parts of Hawaii, much like parts of Europe. And we just simply put it on auto renew every 60 or 70 years. It's very simple. And so that completely mitigated that risk. That got me excited. I don't know if you're like me, but that got me excited because that was a big thing that I was worried about, Jeff. And so if Carl, you were there, we remember I started asking, well, it's in the middle of Africa, right? I didn't even know where Zambia was until I went there. And then we started to learn about massive infrastructure and sustainability projects like the Lobito corridor, which is exactly what we're here to talk about today. So you've heard how our fund is structured in the MVP that Brandon did a great job talking to you about, a minimum viable product. How do we launch a $1 billion fund? Well, it's multiple phases, and we'll talk about that in a little while. We launched a $30 million fund to bring agriculture to the region. Because with the war in Ukraine, people starving to death, we had to meet those needs first. So, well, now, how do we get things from place to place? And nobody's better to talk about that than Carl and Jeff. I'll kick it to you guys. Go right ahead.
Well, thank you, Scott. And yeah, this was a gem of information that found it to us just recently within the last 2 months. So you've now heard the story of how we got together, how Jeff and I started building this thesis. Oh, it had to be about going on 10 months to a year now. And it's evolved in such a beautiful way. Certainly, we wanted to address educating kids, and then it led into feeding kids and feeding families and providing job opportunities as we build out what a bigger city might look like. And of course, we had to address so many things along the way, and that includes certainly, is the land fertile? Is it right for agriculture? And it is. So we've checked that box. Water, is there enough rainfall in that particular region? Yes, there is ample rainfall in our particular region, and we have a plan for irrigation to really supplement, bring the technology into the land. So there's no issues with the recent drought that's happened in the southern part of the region. And then, of course, the next biggest thing is logistics. So with the food security being an issue within the country, and some price floors on maize, which is their biggest crop that they all feed upon. There is challenges with, is there enough grain? So we're addressing that with our whole farming thesis. And what was gifted to us within the last couple of months was from the Libido Corridor Investment Promotion Authority, which built out a beautiful summary of why this particular region, or what's happening in this particular region. What does it mean for Zambia? What does it mean for three key countries, and that is Angola, the DRC, and Zambia. And ultimately, I want to give a call out to Emerging Market Digest and John Causey, who we follow. We're religious on following all the content that he puts out on emerging markets, and this gem was in there. And ultimately, we see this as a huge opportunity for the entire region, not just in moving grain and moving soybeans and the food production, but ultimately the Libido Corridor was built almost 100 years ago by the Portuguese. It has a long history of a rail line. And Scott, I think we have a quick map of what it looks like, but ultimately it is a connection point between the central part of Lusaka, central part of Zambia, onto the eastern seaboard of Africa, which really cuts down transportation by a massive amount when you look at the other points of shipping lanes. And ultimately, this is an agreement that was recently just come out since October, which has funding from the US, from the EU, and it's agreement between Angola, the DRC, and Zambia. So there's a huge collaboration going on. We are actually happy to send this report out to you. Just send us a note that you're interested in reading it, and it'll give you a really in-depth look at what's happening and why this is so important for the region. So ultimately, we see this as a massive opportunity, not only for the fact that we're just south of the copper belt, which is Zambia's largest export good is copper, and this is pretty obvious. It's going to be funded by mineral development. If you look at the companies that are going to be financing this, they're all in the mineral game. But ultimately, that's going to be bringing in both equipment and technology, and also exportation of not only raw goods, but even finished goods. So if there's development in manufacturing sectors, this would be a key area along this corridor. So we see this as massive. And of course, anytime there's growth in manufacturing, in whether it's mining development, what do you do? You're gonna need to feed folks. So having our production of corn, soybeans, winter wheat, I think is going to play in really nicely to this strategy. So before I bore you more about that, I think just send us a note and we'll send this out to you. I'll give you a really in-depth history. But Jeff, maybe you could talk about what the economic impact this could happen in Zambia and of course the region.
That's right. The Libido Corridor, I believe, will set a whole new precedent for economic and strategic development in the region. As you know, transportation is key to any growth in any development, right? So imagine reducing transportation distance by about 2/3, meaning it'll take 2/3 less time to bring goods across those three countries through the Atlantic. So when I say this, I don't exaggerate. Now is the best time to enter the continent of Africa, especially Zambia. So for me, from an economic impact, I see trade enhancement, right? Because historically, those countries were not really trading with each other. And I think the Lobito corridor revitalizes a route that once thrived in the early 1900s, and it'll provide a more efficient pathway for moving goods from Central Africa to the Atlantic Ocean. Congo is the second largest rainforest in the world, and there's a lot of critical goods that are being produced there, especially mineral speaking, like the phones, all the key component for phones or mines from there, and many other goods that we need, copper, to keep civilization thriving, right? So historically, the corridor used to handle about 60% of Zaire, which is how they used to refer to Zambia back in the day, copper. So they want to basically revitalize the route, and I can see a lot of investment attraction coming there as far as another impact, which is 2 billion is being pumped into rehabilitation, and that is funded by the European logistic giants. And I can see the corridor has been transformed into a modern trade route, attracting further international investment. So you can only imagine the amount of resources that's going to be poured into that, and the development along the routes in terms of hotels, tourism. So these kind of things can to kind of follow and then grow more momentum around the region. So I think those three countries are going to have an exciting new face in the next 10 to 20 years. The other thing we want to focus on is the strategic importance, right? As you know, most of the copper that are leaving the copper belt, or most of the minerals from Congo are being routed towards China. And as you know, the US has finally gained interest in securing the strategic importance of Africa. So in the shadow, you have China's expensive belt and road initiative. So they've been building ports, they've been building airports, they've been building a lot of infrastructure, and basically re-seizing those infrastructure in terms of debt. So they create a lot of debt for these countries, and when they can't pay those debts, these ports usually go back to the government of China. So now these initiatives will give the West a foothold in terms of being able to access those minerals through the Atlantic Ocean from Angola. So I think for me, I think this is a massive shift, right? Because you're going to see a lot more material coming to us at a lower cost, right? So right now, China controls 80% of the DRC's copper mines. The Lobito corridor offers an alternative route that aligns with Western economic interests, right? So that, to me, it's super exciting. I've been in Africa for about 12 years, and I was always wondering why aren't we in Africa? Why is China? Of course, we go there and we donate canals, we do all these fun donations, but Africa has a lot more, and I think China has showed us what it has done with the region, right? Although the impact should benefit the people more, and I'm excited that the West finally say, "Hey, let's start treating Africa as a partner," right? Meaning, I feel like the region will thrive more because the way we do business tend to be more partnership driven and more sustainable. Again, I believe those two components, Carl, in terms of strategic importance and in terms of economic impact, it's gonna create massive growth. Like it's just like like during the time when the West was being developed, where we're all chasing gold. I think we're living in an exciting era where we're able to go now and then be able to create something new, create a new city, create a whole new environment. And there's nowhere else in the world, I believe, we can do this right now. So I think Zambia, Zimbabwe are the last frontiers, and we get a chance to play. And I think that's one of the most exciting thing I've done in my entire entrepreneurial career, being able to build a thriving city, build farming, create something that generations later will be like, man, what were these guys thinking? Sitting in our comfort zones and then decided to go somewhere that no one else was thinking about. So this is what I want to kind of bring as far as key points, Carl. So maybe you can kind of continue on the other topic as far as the risk mitigations, et cetera. But I think those are the two parts I'll say as the main importance for the corridor.
Yeah, well, so Jeff, we touched on a little bit of them on the, infrastructure being so key and getting goods in and out of the country. And of course, once there's an agreement in place, then there's the funding and then there's the building, right? So there is ultimately going to be a timeline. But here's the great news, right? We're not a come in and come out, organization. We've all committed to being here for decades, right? So being here in the long haul, so we can get really excited about what this means, and Scott opened up by talking about building Chicago and Denver and Cleveland and all these cities in the U.S., right? We all know they were not built in a day, right? Or the line Rome wasn't built in a day. So these opportunities, I think, are going to be just the beginning of seeing the development in this portion of Africa, for sure. One of the challenges that Africa faces as a continent is having ports where you can get cargo ships in and out safely, right? That is a big challenge. The U.S. has ports all around and has incredible river system to move goods. Africa has got some challenges. So I think when you look at the topography of the continent, having a rail line is really, really important. And the fact that there is interest in building upon it, enhancing it. Certainly it's going to be financed by the minerals, which is, I think everyone on this call recognizes that the continent is very mineral rich, right? There's a lot of interest there specifically for the minerals. I think what's amazing about what we're doing is, this is about supporting the folks that are part of the community, right? And how do you grow the community? So, when you look at this libido corridor, we highlight not only movement of agriculture, but of course, you referenced the tourism and the potential hotels and even just building development. I mean, one of our GP members, Brandon, has been in the business of building and development, which is exciting to all of us here about what we see happening in the future. So let's see. As far as the challenges, I think it's and how we're mitigating. I mean, here's the great thing, right? Our entire plan was built without knowledge of utilizing the libido corridor. The fact that this has been a gift to this particular region, I think it's only going to accelerate the development of what our big vision here is on this particular region. Our thesis was really addressing one of the biggest concerns in the region, and that is food security, right? So right now, when you look at if you look at some of the headlines on the droughts and the drought that's happening in Southern Africa, and has affected, I would say about 70% of all of the agriculture lands in the region, that's created a big problem, right? There is, of course, anytime there's scarcity in food, the price goes up, and that affects the people, right? So ultimately, if we can bring in technology and we can bring in, I view America as a very strong grower of agriculture, right? And we've bringing in more of industrial processes. I think we talked a little bit about this on the last webinar, that there's a high percentage of the farming and growing that's happening in the country of Zambia now that are on small scale farmers. We're talking about 5 to 10 acre farms. And, Jeff referenced the fact that we've got a large scale farming opportunity where our plan is to leverage 15,000 acres of land for an industrial farming. Our property has a river that never goes dry. We've got access to water in the ground, and having proper irrigation is really going to help us stave off any challenges on the potential droughts in the region, which is going to have a really great impact, on future podcasts, but webinars. We'll talk a little bit about more infrastructure planning and the on how we serve the people in the particular local community. The libido corridor is more scalability. Where are we going in the future, right? How does this help us in the long run? And I think in this particular region, there is Zambia is like many other countries. I just read an article about Angola that reference the fact that 85% of the arable lands for growing agriculture are on traditional land that don't have the financial background to build out infrastructure for growing. So we have something here. I've read multiple articles on it. I was like, are they just following us? Because maybe they are. I mean, we've got a pretty solid thesis, and it's all about execution at this point. And we've got a really great team of people in country in Zambia and partners from around the world that are really motivated to help us see this through.
Yeah,
Carl, very well said. And Jeff, I'd love for you, if you could, because you've really had the opportunity to be in country for 12 years, and you've seen so much of the geopolitical challenges, you've seen the local challenges, you've seen the governmental challenges, all the questions that I asked you when we first met, and you really set me at ease and moved this opportunity for me, just as an investor, which is how I first started looking at it, from the pure risk bucket to really my growth bucket. And even at times, I feel like it's even in my safety bucket because we've done such a great job mitigating risk. Jeff, maybe talk about some of the risks and mitigation strategies and tactics that we've been employing, because you've been on the forefront, if you could, bro.
So I think Carl touched on a lot because, as you know, every environment have inherent risk, right? It's always different. So for us, especially if we want to tie it up to the libido corridor, I see political and economic risk, of course, environmental, and a lot of social concerns. And these social concerns are going to create a lot of more problem than we can even account for. We see examples of people creating solar panels, and it stopped raining, and the local the villages basically start breaking them down because they're associating the equipment underground as the lack of rain. So navigating through regions with varying political stability, you have 3 countries with different political stability, from Zambia, one of the safest countries in the world, to DRC with conflicts, right? There's ongoing war going on. So you see the polarities there's a huge gap in terms of political stability between those 2 countries. And of course, Angola tends to be more of in the middle ground. So creating an environment where you see all these 3 spaces or coexisting is going to be critical for the success of this project. And for us as a fund, we've been not only focusing only in Zambia. Our goal is it's continental, right? So that corridor is a perfect timing for us because we see this as a route for us to move, or as we commercially farm, we want to be able to move our good through these 3 countries. You see Congo, they produce a lot of minerals, but very few farming activities, right? Massive opportunity for us from our standpoint, as far as feeding more and more people. Environmental risk, including what impact that means as people start mining, meaning we'll have more people mining in the region because it's easier to get stuff out, right? Meaning, how do we ethically mine? So these are the stuff that I think that's going to become huge discussion points. And the main thing for me, which again, you guys know how I feel about how we enter Africa. It was like, hey, let's make sure whatever we do, we create green value, right? As we're creating investor value, let's not creating an environment where we're marginalizing people that are already marginalized, right? So the commitment to extend to ethical mining and environmental stewardship, ensuring that growth does not come at the expense of the local ecosystem or society. So for me, these are the 4 points I want to kind of like add on top of what Carl's mentioning. And from a fund standpoint, mitigating those, for me, it's already tied to what we're already doing, currency risk. But I think those 4 are more close to the libido corridor, right? And if we're going to leverage this as a way to expand from Zambia outside, we need to factor those 4 things as critical points. And I think the financial and technical support is going to be critical. You have the African Development Bank alongside the EU and the US backing, and making sure that the funding there's enough feasibility studies and strategic advisory to align the corridor with international sustainability standards. So I think when you look at all of this, I think if we can factor all these 5 points that I'm outlining, we have a successful amplification of already amazing thesis that we've built at Acres Club.
Jeff, so well said. And guys, for our listeners out there, the key is, again, even if you choose to come do business with us, even if you choose, as we like to say, come play with us in Africa, even if you don't choose, we understand that this is not for everyone. We understand that. And what we get excited about is the more people that come into this part of the world consciously, the more people that come into this part of the world to add value. I love what Brandon says, a rising tide raises all boats. We just want to take what we've learned already and give that as a gift to you, so that as you come into country, maybe if it's with us or maybe not with us, it doesn't matter. We just want to do it right. And that's as we saw UAE putting tons of money in, and we saw other parts of the world putting lots of money into this region. We said, hey, what would it be like to build a conscious, sustainable, regenerative city and become the blueprint for those who are also wanting to do the same thing, where they can look at us and say, wow, they really did it right. They didn't come in to just take things out of Africa like we've seen so many times. They came to add value. And that's why when billionaires are calling in to get large plots of land, they know that the richest copper vein runs through Zambia. They know why they want to buy the land. And I'm not judging. I'm not throwing any kind of judgment at all. When they call in, Jeff and his team get the first call. He's got carte blanche on these opportunities because, again, Jeff and our team and his team wants to add value. And I think that this is such a key point to make, guys. In any area of life, how do you add value? So we looked at it and we said, okay, phase one, agriculture. With the war in Ukraine, people starving to death, the surrounding countries of Zambia all overselling their food, we said, we've got to do good. We were just at fund launch and we had crowds of people standing around us as we talked about what they called an impact investment opportunity. Yes, our investors are seeing ridiculous returns. Yes, people are excited about the financial opportunity, and they're also excited about the impact. So phase two would be security. As we start to see this city being built out, we have to provide security. So we've got incredible partners who help put an end to human trafficking. The stuff that you've seen on the news, they're part of that. And they've committed to say, hey, we will help you build security in this region so you can take care of the people that you're protecting. Phase three is where Jeff's vision really comes to light and says, how do we educate? How do we build schools for this region? That's phase three of our opportunity. Phase four, of course, is then how do we provide sustainable healthcare? How do we take what the rest of the world knows and bring it to this region so people not only have a quality of life, but also lifespan and health span. And so that's our fund. Now, Brandon, as we talked about education and we talked about agriculture and which one do we focus on first, we've already mentioned that you can't educate people with empty bellies. You can't put people to work and teach them skills and jobs with empty bellies. So this is where you shine. Go ahead and talk to us about how the Libido Corridor directly affects our phase one agriculture and how this is a game changer for something that we've already got in operation. It's all yours.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. So if you think about the way that society has risen through the years, the biggest contributor is trade. So being able to move goods at a cost-effective price is how you can get an edge in the game. Take, for instance, if you order something online, okay, and it comes in and it's damaged, okay, oftentimes when you go to return that item, the manufacturer will just say, no, you keep it, we'll ship you a new one. That's because the cost of shipping is so expensive, it doesn't make sense for them to send out a new one. They say, you know what, just keep it because it's 60% of the cost of the good. And so that's exactly what we're looking at here. So now all of a sudden, you're able to cut that transit time down significantly and open up a brand new port that wasn't getting minerals before. So two things. One, you've got cost-effective transportation that is now accessible. And two, you've got competition, okay? Competition is what breeds excellence, as we all know. So now, instead of everything heading east or maybe south, which is even longer, you have another option that is west. And so it really opens up the opportunity for, as Scott and the team mentioned earlier, us in America to be able to buy those goods versus everything going to China. So it's really going to create a strong market for Africa in general, and Zambia, Angola, Congo, like they're all going to benefit greatly because of this. So also when you talk about, this new infrastructure coming in, not only do you have the countries that are putting in billions of dollars like the US, so they're investing money into this because they see the benefit, because they know that these precious metals are what's key in the coming technology. So we're just more and more, it's always precious metals. You constantly hear about that. And so we have to be able to get that from the source. Otherwise, we're not going to be competitive. And everybody knows the US has to be competitive. So with that, you see the M23 rebels and everything in the DRC where it's very unstable and you have some issues between it and Rwanda on the east side. Well, now putting this line going through there is going to provide not only the infrastructure, so people actually building the line, it's also going to provide stable income. So industry is going to build around that, just like it does a river or a major highway in the US. And so also the US interest and other European countries now have a vested interest in the area. So when you talk about security and security forces, since the US is putting so much into it along with other Western countries, they have a vested interest in stability in the country. And so they're going to be providing more and more of a security force assistance for the area. Not only that, just in general, any of these rebel fighters, they are able to attract recruits because they can play on their miscomfort. So the economy's bad, they can't find work, they can't do this, they feel out of place, whatever. Like all of that tends to go away when somebody's got a nice job, nice income, food, roof over the head. Why would I want to go live in the jungle and fight if I can have a nice house and, go watch soccer or football, or I can, do whatever with my family? Like nobody really grows up and says, I want to go live in the jungle and just fight. I mean, that's not how it is. Everybody wants a good home life and to enjoy that. And so it just starts to trickle out. And then with that, you have more and more people. It's like taking, a golf swing. And at the point of impact, if you just adjust your head just a millimeter or two, it doesn't really look like that much. And you can't really tell much of a difference off the beginning. But 300 or 280 down when it lands, then you can see, oh, wow, this was in the other fairway and this one is in my fairway. And that's the kind of change you see. So as you count over the decades, right? The first 5 years, you're not going to see much, but in the next 10 and 20 and 30 and 40. And that's when you look and say, hey, this provided dividends for generations. And it's really that small shift that can change the trajectory of a country. So with us particular, so this is all mainly for minerals. That's the big thing why everybody's investing in it. And that's great. But we're going to benefit from that simply because now that is opening up rail that can easily move grain and other things. So trains go out, but trains are also going to have to come back. So that trade is just going to benefit the area, especially because that line is so close to where we're situated. So more and more is going to shift up there and you're going to have more and more growth. So, looking at how this benefits us particularly in the grain market. So as we talked about, competition is key. Having multiple markets is key. So the minerals, copper, being able to sell to China or the West is key. It's also the same with us. We're going to be able to move our product cost effectively and be competitive more and more. So we can keep trading with Angola and DRC and everyone else. So we're not as reliant on the local markets. So for instance, right now, the Federal Reserve or the FRA, which is the government agency buying maize, it's got a lower price point than what you can go sell maize for in surrounding countries. The price point they're buying for is like $264 a ton compared to $300 to $500 in surrounding areas. Well, that's the price at that location, but you still have to move the product. So by lowering the cost of that move, you're going to raise your profit margin at the end of the day. And it just goes back to dollars and cents, right? At the end of the day, we all want to do good, but you can do a lot more good when you're making a profit. And so this is great all the way around. We're excited for this. We can't wait for it to get done. There's going to be some hiccups on the way. We know that. Look at, the train to nowhere in California, the bridge to nowhere that you do. I mean, we have constant issues here. So there will be issues there. But the fact that it is already under construction, it is moving forward. This is going to happen and it's truly going to beneficiate the entire area. And it's just one step, and it's going to keep growing. The U.S. is committed to 30 years of investment in this in different infrastructure avenues. I mean, it's just going to keep growing as we go. So that's kind of a little bit of the current events and how this will really affect in a small and a big way our investment and any investment that you're looking at or any business. So I think we've got some questions that have come in a little bit. So we'll kind of go through some of those and answer them for you guys.
Brandon, thank you so much for covering those key items. And there's a lot of questions that we get around everything that we've discussed to this point, guys. And I know we're wrapping up. We want to keep this very tight to an hour or less. And it's truly just taking the collective experience of everyone on this call and just sharing it, just for the purpose of sharing. We want to add value to your life. We want to add value to the region because, again, whether or not you choose to invest with us, I mean, we opened our LP fund up to 100 folks that might want to come play. And we like to say the truth is we're really only looking for maybe 10, 15, 20 top players at most, because we want to be able to bring people in country. We want to show them the land. We want to be able to work together, collaborate together, play together. And I love what you said there, Brandon, about how being able to bring the West and the already emerging markets and I would say superpowers of the world to this region is absolutely integral. I think back to last year when we were all there together, 250 of us platinum partners, and man, we went to the Makuni school and we served these children. Oh my gosh, it was incredible. 800 children a day come through this school. Many of them are walking barefoot to get there because they crave education so much. And when we wrapped up, I'll never forget. In fact, I pulled up a fun picture for you guys just to see. When we wrapped up, the folks who helped facilitate this amazing opportunity came to us and they said, guys, look, we appreciate what you did. We appreciate the money. We appreciate the water. We appreciate the toilets. We appreciate all of that so much. But what we really need is your thought capital. We really need to understand how the rest of the world does it. And with the Libido corridor making it possible for us to move goods in and out of the region, it's practically right through our land, for goodness sakes. It's amazing. And with us being able to bring agriculture, you realize people are starving because they can't get water. Well, we can get water at source. We've been able to use technology through our nonprofit partners and even our for-profit partners. They've been able to find water in some of the driest places on the planet. So we know how to find water. We've got never-ending rivers that run through our land. We've got that covered, right? We've got regenerative agricultural practices. You heard us on our last call. I'm just covering some questions that we've had. You heard us on our last webinar talk about how Zambia is right next door, and they need what we're producing. They're the biggest cattle producer in the entire region. You heard us talk about on our last call how we're able to mitigate these risks and how we're able to do what we do. And so we have had some more questions come in. And guys, if you have any questions, please pop them in right now. We'll cover them live and we'd be happy to share that as we wrap up. But we did have a couple that came in ahead of time. And thank you to those who did ask those questions ahead of time. We greatly appreciate that. And one of those was just simply, when will the project be completed? When will the Libido corridor be completed? And on the report that we'll gladly send you, should you ask, all you have to do is just reply to the registration email that you got. Just please let us know that you want it. We'll be happy to send it to you. On the report, it says that it is set to conclude in 5 years. So in 2029, they set to have this part of the project completed through Zambia. So that's pretty darn exciting. Now, there was a couple other questions that I do want to cover. How do drought and rainfall affect our agricultural project? Brandon, would you mind covering that? How does drought with El Nino and the rainfall and everything else, how does that directly affect us? I know I just kind of talked about it, but I figured you'd be best to maybe cover it in a little more detail as we wrap up.
Yeah, so right now the country's gone through an El Nino. It's it's really driven up prices, but it's also really hurt a lot of people. So it's tough in the fact that you hate to see people go through that, but on the good side, it does drive up prices, which in turn helps our bottom line. So for us, we're fortunate that where we're located, it's not hit near as hard. We're still getting some rainfall versus the south, and we've also got water on the site, as well as retainage ponds and stuff. So we're able to store enough water to water through the year. And as we grow over the next 2 years, we'll be irrigating everything anyway. So then, we're just going to benefit as, El Nino or global warming or aliens come and be able to go to market and really get maximum for what we're producing.
Brandon, you never cease to amaze me, brother. I love it. Just a wealth of so many resources. Oh my goodness. I wanted to cover this last question as we wrap up, and thank you all so much for your time. For those attending and for those who are seeking to do amazing things in this part of the world with us and even beside us. We did have a really great question come in, and I've got two of them. I want to hit two of them, all right? What challenges investors might face during acquiring land in Zambia? So, Jeff, I think you'd be perfect to cover that. And a piggyback to that one, we got a bonus question. How are we adding value to the local people of that region? I know we like to talk about philanthrocapitalism and taking the best of philanthropy and capitalism, so it creates a regenerative giving option to an opportunity to serve those people. But maybe talk about the challenges acquiring land and then the value that we're adding back to the people of the region as we wrap up.
Well, like every place, like I said, there are unique risk in purchasing land. I mean, in the US, we are advanced enough where there are systems in place where you can track things. And Zambia is in the process of what they call e-governance, where they're starting to create electronic processes where everyone can access if you have the right information, right? Just like we have Sunbiz in Florida, you can verify things very easily if a company's registered in Florida or not. So I've seen massive changes in the past 5 to 10 years as far as e-governance, right? So Zambia is growing and growing. Matter of fact, a lot of the processes towards the end of land titling is now being digital, right? As things move closer and closer to the Ministry of Land. But if you're getting traditional land, it's still a relationship, right? What I always tell people is in Africa, it's relationship first in business. Whereas in the West, we always been told, let's keep it professional. If you do a good job enough, then you can migrate over to something relationship. We can have a beer together or have a glass of wine if we thrive on our business relationship. So it is all about relationship, which is good, but it's also bad because it doesn't grow as fast, right? Because you have to like someone. There's a lot of things, a lot of complexity, cultural norms that you have to respect before you can get a chief to agree that you're worthy enough to own a piece of land. And that chief may not even want to give you title because the chief has to issue right to a consent. It's called the consent of the chief, to say not only are you worthy to have the land, but you're worthy to be able to get the land outside of his grasp. So that's a level of trust because he's been tasked to protect the land by his people. So to get through that process requires a lot of relationship building, right? And I think that's why we are very different from many foreigners entering the space. Not only do we have a lot of experience collectively in the region, but we're also able to understand that we're not just there to create profit. We're there in the long run, and we've been there, and we have over a decade of serving, as you rightly put, Scott, that yes, we're creating value, we're creating jobs, we're creating economic movements. However, we're not just there to just take for us. So you can see what's happening in West Africa right now. Many of those former French colonies are leaving France because all France did, again, I don't mean to offend any French attendees, but they just took and they add very little value, right? And that's what's happening. So if someone's right now want to enter the space and say, I'm just going to take because there's a point of vulnerability, it's not a sustainable model. And then that's why you see a lot of people coming back complaining, saying, I've been hurt because, yeah, you've been taking, and then someone caught up with you and then they took it back by force. So because everything we received came willingly, we've been able, that's our only model. Like we're creating a place of allowance where both sides wants to partner together. So for me, I think that's the biggest part as far as land acquisition, Scott. Like how do create a relationship, and that relationship tied to the second part of your question, how do we add value? We focus on education. It's my background. My background is education. And I truly believe education can create spaces, like Brendan says, let's hand somebody, instead of handing someone a fish, teach them how to fish, right? Create fishermen's. Then you don't have to keep, you don't have to create handicaps, right? So because we're coming with that mentality, we're able to create our farming system. I think Brendan did an amazing job creating the framework where we're going to create schools, we're going to create training, so that way the farmers are not just, even if we let's say 20 years later we leave, they can survive on their own, because they're going to be able to understand how to manage expensive equipment, complicated equipment. So we're going to bring experts from outside to benchmark on what is happening, whether it's I think, Carl, you notice better the term you use, regenerative farming, the technologies we're going to bring into the space, right? So we're different in that sense because we're looking at the future, and we want to create value where one day the continent can serve us back here in America, right? So for me, that is the vision we have, where we're not just coming in there saying we're going to teach someone. And again, I got humbled very quickly when I came in with the USA hat saying, I know everything, I'm going to teach you. We couldn't move our software, right? And I tell people, you get humbled really quick in this environment, no matter what you have in your mind, if you don't localize your intention and then make it sure that there's a win-win situation. We understand we're business people, we want to make profit, yet we're not going to do it by taking too much, by harming the people, because they're going to turn back. And you know, karma is beautiful, right? What goes around comes around. So for me, I think when it comes to land acquisition, we have to make sure that the theme that we maintain is a theme of sustainability and partnership. I don't go into details because our secret sauce is how to get the land. So I've been spinning around the question you asked me. So the way we acquire land and make sure their title is our secret sauce. And this is the value we're adding to our investors, Scott. But when we do it right. And we make sure that the land itself, for the 99 years that we're granted this title, no one's going to come in and test or resolve, right? So that's how I'm
Jeff, I can comment on that. So I can tell everybody on here that the secret sauce is relationships. That's it. That's how we do it. It's the relationship and giving back to the community. And that takes time, expertise, and a good heart. And fortunately, Jeff brings all that to the table. So, we appreciate everybody. Exactly. Yeah. We appreciate everybody coming in today. If you're interested in coming and joining us on this journey together, we love to have you. So, just reach out to the email and someone will be in touch with you. And again, we look forward to hearing from everybody. Thank you so much, everybody, for the time. And hope that you guys got something out of this. I know that we're a bunch of nerds and we could talk all night. So have a great night, everybody. And we'll see you for episode 3. Thanks.
See you next week for episode. Yeah, that's right. Next week.
Thank you all.
All right.